1945. Soviet forces charge across Europe in a race to conquer the Nazi capital, Berlin. To succeed, they must fight their way through heavily fortified enemy territory, overcome a vast network of deadly defenses, and defeat a series of German strongholds, where defenders are prepared to fight to the death. These epic battles pit Nazi engineering against Soviet military might, and will ultimately seal the fate of Hitler and the Third Reich. In this series, we investigate the most extraordinary events of World War II from a brand new perspective. Matching rarely seen archive film, photography from the front line, and remarkable aerial reconnaissance images to their original locations. We reconstruct the crucial battles. Daring bombing raids and deadly terror weapons that changed the course of history. Soaring over the battlefields, we reveal the secrets of World War II from above. An Allied reconnaissance pilot flies over Nazi-occupied Europe. Soaring above the city of Poznan in West Poland, he spots a striking array of huge concrete buildings. Aerial images show each complex is a 19th century fort, now occupied by German forces. A closer look reveals the Nazis have fortified this megastructure, adding guns, trenches, anti-tank ditches, and artillery positions. To reach the German capital, the Red Army must break through all these ferocious defenses and overcome a series of Nazi obstacles on the road to Berlin. January 1945. The Western Allies fight across Europe to reach Berlin. But Soviet Premier Joseph Stalin is determined to beat them to the Nazi capital and pay back Hitler for invading the Soviet Union. He orders an all-out offensive with 6,000 tanks and over 2 million soldiers. They must secure the northern and southern flanks so they can launch a central attack towards Berlin. But 200 kilometers east of the German capital lies a small city that turns into a major obstacle: Poznan. A Nazi rear attack launched from here could cut off and destroy the Soviet forces. The Red Army must secure this German stronghold before they can begin their assault on Berlin. The Soviets expect they can easily crush this small city. But Poznan won't be taken so easily. It has one of the strongest fortifications in Europe, with an incredible 18 forts protecting its borders. Hitler is so determined to stop the Soviet advance, he declares Poznan a stronghold and orders 20,000 soldiers to hold the city at all costs. Fort Tiertzen covers an area of over 55,000 square meters. It forms part of the ring of forts that protects Poznan. Tietzen is built from brick and concrete and protected beneath a layer of soil. At its entrance, a drawbridge and blockhouse protect the main gate. And along its edge, an 850-meter-long moat, up to 11 meters wide and 9 meters deep, surrounds the entire structure. Dozens of German troops barricade themselves inside this fort and prepare for the Soviet attack. Local expert Marcin Walkowiak investigates this extraordinary edifice.
It was very important for the German Empire to put the stronghold here in the city of Poznań, because the Poznań lies on the straight line from Moscow through Warsaw to Berlin. So they need to put a first-class fortress here.
A vast maze of rooms lies hidden inside the fort, with two-story barracks, emergency shelters, and 5 gunning stations. Inside, the Nazis stockpile 2,000 grenade launchers and roughly 200 machine guns in its ammunition rooms, and upgrade the complex with the best weaponry available, including 2 MG-34 machine guns placed on top of the fort, with a range of 2 kilometers. The fort's elevated position provides a clear field of view for the German guns to direct fire down on approaching enemies.
It was the highest point of the city. For more than a mile, the Germans can see the Russian soldiers trying to approach the fort. We got 60, maybe 70 soldiers here against thousands of Russians approaching from the north.
On the 25th of January, 36,000 Soviet troops and supporting units encircle Poznan and begin their attack on its fortifications. To take down Fort Tietzen, the Soviets fight their way across its ditch, under fire from grenade launchers and a hail of bullets. A platoon charges towards the main gate and use 8 grenades to blow up the armored door to break into the barracks. The fort's tunnels, once a safe haven for German soldiers, are now a death trap.
It must be a terrifying experience for soldiers when they heard explosions everywhere. They probably know that when the Russians catch them, they would be killed.
The Germans are overwhelmed and unable to put up any resistance. Within 24 hours, the ring of forts is penetrated. The Red Army thrusts into Poznan and seizes the city block by block. Soviet tanks storm down its narrow streets. They blast holes through buildings and level entire blocks. On the ground, soldiers engage in an intense, close combat fight for control of the city. To extinguish the German resistance, the Red Army takes no chances and reduces the center of Poznan to a pile of smoldering ruins. As the final vestiges of the city's defenses are taken down, the Soviet First Guard Tank Division continue the advance to Berlin. But in their way lies a truly state-of-the-art Nazi defense network. January 23rd, 1945. Stalin has launched a major offensive on the Eastern Front. But right in the center of his attack, Soviet reconnaissance units discover a huge set of fortifications, including more than 100 combat stations, numerous bunkers, artillery positions, and anti-tank traps. They form part of a multi-layered defense. Hitler's Ostwall. It's 80 kilometers long and designed to thwart the Soviet assault on the German capital. The Red Army have no choice but to attack the Ostwall head-on. At its edge, Nazi engineers build an immense and ingenious barrier that weaponizes the landscape by harnessing the powerful forces of nature. The barrier plugs into a network of canals and dams. A system of mechanical gates allows them to redirect water to flood specific areas, forcing the enemy into pre-designated kill zones. Historian Robert Kubachevsky investigates this incredible Nazi defense system. He examines one of the last operational dam gates in the area.
This huge system was designed to flood the terrain and to cut off the western side from the eastern side and prevent the attack, or at least slow it down.
The machinery inside this room allows Nazi soldiers to flood the enemy at the turn of a lever.
This is the heart of the system, that the dam could be moved up or down to lower the water level or to rise it. Incredible engineering, incredible art of technology was used in here. Every detail was carefully designed.
The dams are so vital to the Nazi defenses that they encase the controls in a tough armored shell.
Also got steel boards, steel battens, reinforcing the ceiling of the chamber. The door is also armored.
These defenses are a marvel of Nazi engineering and can easily create a huge obstacle for Soviet soldiers and tanks. But on the 29th of January, when the Red Army arrive, Mother Nature gives them a unique opportunity. January of 1945 is one of the coldest on record. Sub-zero temperatures cause the dam machinery to seize up. The lakes and canals freeze over. The icy weather allows the Soviets to cross unimpeded and override the Ostwall's first set of fortifications. Now the Red Army must break through its second set of defenses. The combat stations. Known as Panzerwerks, these steel domes are built to withstand continuous enemy fire.
This is a combat cupola made of the mixture of regular steel and different precious metals. They could stand multiple impact of 150mm caliber and single impact of 210mm howitzer.
Each Panzerwerk is also armed to the teeth. Equipped with MG-34 machine guns, a Fortress flamethrower, and an M19 mortar grenade launcher, all surrounded by a ring of barbed wire and trenches. But what can be seen from above is just a tiny part of a huge and hidden complex. Beneath the steel domes sprawls an underground network of offices, barracks for soldiers, and storage for ammunition. A railway line runs through a subterranean tunnel. It extends over 32 kilometers to connect dozens of the combat stations together. This subterranean city can house 24,000 soldiers. It is the second largest underground military facility in the world, with generators for electricity, a direct water supply, and an air filtration system. The Ostwall is fully self-sufficient and an intimidating barrier for the Red Army. On the 31st of January, Soviet T-34 tanks surround the Panzerwerks in overwhelming numbers and fire their cannons at the combat stations. Although the armoured cupolas are impervious to their rounds, Hitler makes a crucial mistake. He's reassigned most of his forces to fight the Allies on the Western Front, leaving a meager 1,000 soldiers to guard the 80-kilometer defense line. With the Ostwall unable to operate at full capacity, the Soviets destroy the Nazi juggernaut in just 72 hours. Having neutralized the Ostwall's defense network, the Red Army charges towards Berlin at incredible speed. Stalin is desperate to settle the score with Hitler and take Berlin. Over the last 4 years, German forces have murdered around 27 million Soviet civilians and comrades. Fueled by rage and the lust for Nazi blood, Stalin wages a war of annihilation.
Если немцы хотят найти среднюю войну, они ее получат.
February 1945. Stalin's Central Forces have reached Kustrien, on the banks of the River Oder, just 85 kilometers east of Berlin. But the Red Army's rapid advance causes a major problem. They've overrun their flanking armies and now risk being encircled and attacked by the Germans. Before the Soviets can launch their attack on Berlin, they must first consolidate their forces and secure a supply line across the Oder River at Kustrien. Kustrien is crucial for the Red Army to conquer. Military historian Matthew Meneke explores this key battleground.
Without Castries, Berlin cannot be taken. Having a number of road bridges was very important for the Soviets to be able to capture, because they needed these bridges in order to build up their forces for the ultimate advance on Berlin.
The German army is rapidly running out of trained soldiers. To defend Castries against Soviet attack, the Nazis form a unit with over 16,000 German soldiers. It's made up of support troops, teenagers, and young men from the local people's militia, the Volkssturm. What the Volkssturm lack in combat experience, they make up for in fighting spirit.
The revenge that the Soviets are bringing with them is very much on the minds of all the German soldiers who were fighting here. So it now becomes something more than simply holding ground. This is now defending the homeland. It's defending their own families.
In early February, the Red Army besieges Castries. The German defenders hold out for 60 days, but they're eventually overwhelmed by Soviet forces, hell-bent on revenge. The Red Army shows no mercy and flattens Castries. Bombs and heavy artillery shatter buildings. They obliterate homes, the shopping street, and the local church.
It's kind of a strange feeling, actually, when you walk down the streets here of once what was the old city. There was certainly no illusion that the Soviets were bringing that same level of brutality that the Germans had brought to them in 1941.
German soldiers flee across the Oder and blow up several bridges behind them.
You're now talking about the Russians being within 90 kilometers of Berlin. And there's this real sense of urgency in wanting to stop the Russians at the Oder River.
Hitler is desperate to defend Germany at all costs, even if it means sacrificing his own men.
Ich erwarte von jedem Deutschen, dass das auf seine Pflicht bezog. Ich erwarte von jedem Gesunden, dass sich mit Leib und Leben einsetzt im Kampf. Ich erwarte von jedem Kranken und Gebrechlichen oder sonst Unentbehrlichen.
He plans a series of suicide missions, using Luftwaffe pilots to destroy bridges across the Oder. The unit is given the nickname the Leonidas Squadron. The German Air Force has sustained heavy losses by this stage of the war. They have plenty of aircraft, but don't have enough pilots or fuel to keep them all in the air. Their solution is to turn their excess planes into gliding bombs. A pilot flies a light plane mounted on top of a larger, pilotless aircraft, packed full of explosives. The missions are fraught with peril. Early raids have just a 1% chance of survival.
This was effectively the German version of the kamikaze. These men went into the skies with the explicit knowledge that they were not going to come back onto the ground.
On the 17th of April, 1945, the Leonidas Squadron flies 30 raids. Once the pilot has the target in sight, he maneuvers into a 30-degree dive, flying at 650 kilometers per hour. under a hail of enemy fire. He triggers explosive bolts to release the lower aircraft, which descends steeply towards the bridge and detonates on impact. The suicide missions destroy 2 key railway bridges across the Oder and stem the Red Army's relentless advance. But the Soviets waste no time establishing a new crossing. Aerial reconnaissance photos reveal they repair the bridges within several days to carry the crucial supplies they need across the river. Now, their attack on Berlin can begin. Mid-April 1945. On their way to Berlin, the Western Allies face fierce resistance. Their advance grinds to a halt close to the Elbe River, over 200 kilometers from Berlin. In the east, Soviet armies are now on German soil, just 80 kilometers from the Nazi capital. Ahead of them is Reichsstrasse 1, a state road that gives them a straight run at Berlin and a chance to win the race against the Western Allies. But Hitler recognizes the threat and sets up defenses on a hillside known as the Seelow Heights. Here, 110,000 Germans face a Soviet invasion force of nearly 1 million soldiers. Taking Seelow Heights rests on the shoulders of Marshal Georgy Zhukov. He's ordered to capture Berlin before the Western Allies reach the city. And under immense pressure from Stalin, who wants the world to see it's the Soviet Union who ultimately crushes Hitler's Third Reich. Attacking this valley will be no simple task. The Nazis have diverted water from nearby fields to turn the area into marshland. Steep hills limit tank access, and deep ravines, ideal for concealing soldiers armed with guns, give the defenders the edge. Military historian Mark Newton investigates the challenges Zhukov must overcome.
From here you can really see the entire battlefield, but it would have been very hard for the Soviets to conceal any large movement of troops as they came towards the heights. The Germans, for the most part, can dig in and really just face the oncoming onslaught. And so, although it's a 10-to-1 advantage, if you're on good defensive ground, it doesn't necessarily mean this is going to be a cakewalk for the Soviets.
At 3 a.m. on the 16th of April 1945, more than 40,000 Soviet guns, mortars, and rocket launchers light up the skies to attack Seelow. It's one of the greatest concentrations of firepower ever seen. "30 minutes into the battle, the Soviets switch on 143 giant searchlights to signal the advance. They direct them straight at the German lines to stun the enemy. But the effect proves cataclysmic. Smoke from the barrage and the early morning mist reflect the powerful lights. The scattered light not only blinds the Soviet soldiers, but also reveals their silhouettes, making them easy targets for the Germans. It's a massacre. Zhukov struggles to break through the German defenses. He launches wave after wave of attacks, turning the fields of Silo into a blood-drenched battleground. To support the assault, 800 Soviet planes bomb German positions from the air. 3,000 tanks fight on the ground. But the boggy terrain slows them down. Within hours, the tanks are stuck in the quagmire. The vast traffic jam, completely exposed to the full force of German artillery.
This was a killing field. It was not a good place to be as an infantryman or a tanker. The one thing Zhukov wants to prevent is losing all momentum in the attack. So he has to keep throwing forces onto the CLR heights to try and achieve this breakthrough.
By the time the smoke clears, hundreds of tank carcasses lie strewn across the valley floor. 12,000 Germans are killed, and 33,000 Soviets are dead. But Zhukov's assault on Silo Heights succeeds. The Red Army eliminates the last organized defense that stands between them and Berlin. The road to the German capital is now clear for the taking. Stalin's forces are now poised to strike Berlin from all sides. The plan is for Zhukov's army to attack from the north and the east, and a second group to strike from the south and west to completely encircle the city. On the 20th of April 1945, Hitler's 56th birthday, the Nazi leader makes a rare appearance outside his bunker in Berlin. He awards the Iron Cross to members of the Hitler Youth for their heroic acts defending Germany. Hitler is becoming increasingly detached from reality and believes the war can still be won. That same day, at 11 a.m., Zhukov's long-range artillery begins a non-stop assault on Berlin. Their aim is to cause widespread destruction and shatter German morale before the final ground assault. They launch more explosives in a single attack than the Western Allies have dropped on the German capital since the war began. Having softened up Berlin, Soviet troops encircle the bombarded city. Hitler is surrounded. His only chance of escape is from here. This is Tempelhof Airport, an extraordinary megastructure situated just 3 kilometers south of Hitler's Führer bunker. Viewing from above reveals its vast scale. The site is almost twice the size of the city-state of Monaco. The enormous elliptical-shaped airfield covers an area over 1 square kilometer. Its main building is 1.3 kilometers long and houses giant hangars. Battlefield archaeologist Natasha Bilson explores this remarkable site.
Tempelhof was to be a symbol of Hitler's world capital. It's monumental its architecture, the airfield space, the sheer size of it. This is massive.
Tempelhof Airport was inaugurated in 1923. In the 1930s, Hitler's engineers rebuilt it to create an extraordinary transit hub and showcase the might of the Third Reich.
The complex is a physical manifestation of Nazi megalomania. Tempelhof reflects Hitler's dreams of reshaping Berlin. He wants to create a global Nazi capital that rivals the likes of ancient Egypt.
Tempelhof is the only remaining escape route for Hitler and his Nazi officials. The Soviets must cut off and immobilize the airport. On the 26th of April, the Red Army launches their attack. They position tanks to block aircraft from escape and blast the buildings and hangars with artillery and rockets. A heap of twisted metal and wrecked planes lie across the tarmac. Tempelhof is finally captured. With the Nazis' only means of escape cut off, the Soviets close in on the city center. Intense street warfare breaks out across Berlin as the Red Army advances through the city. Just 90,000 German defenders protect the capital against a Soviet invasion force of 1 million troops. Red Army soldiers relentlessly move from block to block and building to building, blasting anything that stands in their way. It's total carnage. Aerial images taken by Allied aircraft a month earlier reveal the center of Berlin is a heavily defended zone. The Nazis codename it Sector Z, short for the Citadel. It is the beating heart of the German government, the site of the Reich Chancellery, the Ministry of the Interior, and the Reichstag, one of Germany's most iconic landmarks. With the fall of Berlin inevitable, Stalin orders Marshal Zhukov to capture the Reichstag and raise the Soviet banner over its roof by the 1st of May. It is one of the most sacred days in the Soviet calendar. He now has less than 48 hours to complete his mission.
The Reichstag is seen by the Soviets as the seat of German government. Stalin wants to tell the world that Soviet Russia has total victory over Nazi Germany.
The Reichstag's thick walls have withstood brutal punishment from Allied shelling and aerial bombardment. German soldiers now prepare its defense by bricking up its doors and windows. They place machine guns on its corner towers and above its main entrance, and position 2 88mm guns to cover the approach to the building. They flood the construction site for an underground tunnel, creating a huge anti-tank ditch, and establish several strongpoints in the square outside.
Any Soviet tanks coming through here would have been faced by a hurricane of fire. You can just imagine the sound. and the soldiers trying to approach the square would have been shredded to pieces.
But an even greater threat for the Red Army lies on their approach to the Reichstag. Berlin's flak towers. This concrete stronghold houses a huge gun complex and is one of 3 massive anti-aircraft facilities that guard Berlin. The flak towers soar 5 stories tall and have reinforced walls 2 meters thick. They are built to be impervious to tank fire and armed with a formidable array of weapons, including 4 twin 128mm anti-aircraft guns, effective as tank killers.
One of the Black Towers has a clear line of sight to the entrance of the Reichstag. This meant that the Germans could effectively mow down any Soviets attempting to breach the building.
The Soviets pound the flak towers with cannons and bombs. But the barrage barely dents the concrete structure. To give them their best chance of advancing past the flak towers, the Soviets must wait until nightfall and launch a covert mission under the cover of night. At 6 p.m. on the 30th of April, the sun sets over the German capital and the Red Army launches their final assault. Soviet troops race through Sector Z. They fire 2 mortars to smash a hole through the bricked-up entrance to the Reichstag. The soldiers pour into the building, fighting floor to floor to reach the roof. At 10:40 p.m. on the 30th of April, 80 minutes before their deadline, the troops finally raise the Soviet banner of victory above the Reichstag. A photo of the scene is captured and circulated around the world, symbolizing the Soviet military victory over Nazi Germany. Stalin is overjoyed. Just 800 meters away in the Führer bunker, Hitler, knowing the war is lost and refusing to be captured by the Red Army, takes his own life. After 6 long years of bitter fighting, the war in Europe comes to an end in Berlin. More than 40 million people have died across Europe and the Soviet Union. The German capital's landmarks, once the focal point of Nazi rallies, are now overrun by Soviet soldiers. The tyranny of Hitler's Third Reich is over. Peace finally returns to Europe.